Hello everybody and welcome to this virtual event live from Telstra's Studio T at the Customer Insight Centre in Sydney. My name is Jeremy Little. I'm co-founder and CEO of Capital Pitch and I'll be moderating today. Now this is a virtual event. You've got a platform there right in front of you, so we'd love to hear from you. Now you can get social. We want to see you on Twitter and Facebook and interacting with it. Now you can follow along with the slides, and in the Resources Centre you'll actually be able to download a copy of the slides for later use. And in the Q&A window we want to hear your questions, so please send us questions and I will answer them, ask them of our moderators today as well. Now joining us, or first of all what we're going to be talking about today is branch data management made easy. And joining us in the studio are Brett Waddington, from the Account Director at Riverbed Technologies, and Daniel Waters, a Business Development Manager for the Integrated Services Sales in Telstra. Guys, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Now, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself in just a second, and whilst you're doing that, we're going to go to a polling question, the first of 4 today, so stay on and we want to hear from you on the polling questions. So the first one is up on your screen now. It's around whether you currently have servers or storage applications in remote branches, so let us know about that. And Brett, could you please give us a little introduction on yourself?
Yeah, look, I've worked at Riverbed for about 5 years and worked in telecoms and with service providers for about 20 years, which is quite a long time now I think about it. But yes, and Dan and I have been working together for about 4 years as well, haven't we, Dan?
Yep.
Thank you very much. And Daniel, some background on you, please.
Sure, Jeremy. I've been in Telstra since 2000, so just over 15 years. In that time I've had various roles in sales, and today I'm currently a Business Development Manager in our managed services space.
Very good. Well, I'm sure everyone's looking forward to hearing from you. You've got an interesting topic today. And results from the poll, 66% do currely have, so looks like we've got the right people on the line.
I think
watching.
we do.
So that's good.
Thank you.
And 22% have a combination. Okay, so let's talk about the agenda for today. So we've got branch office IT trends, but Brett, can you talk us through the agenda, please?
I will. So we really want to talk today about what's going on in the market and what we're seeing in the branches, and I'm going to tell a little bit of maybe a bit of a story. And the rise of the data centre, we're going to talk about that as well, and the impact of the branches and the cloud and what impact that's having, especially in the dichotomy of cost structures that's occurring. And then we will want to talk about some of the pain points that probably the audience might experience, so around managing data in the branch and services and apps in the branch. And we'll talk about a little bit about the Telstra offer 2, which is the solution to the problem that we're going to address today. So, and then we'll talk a little bit probably about some examples, some how it applies to customers in different markets, whether you're an enterprise, whether you're an SMB, or whether you're in retail, whether you're in manufacturing, and maybe talk about some of those areas. And then finally we'll probably wrap up with a little bit of a story around Visi, which is a Telstra and Riverbed customer, and yeah.
Beautiful. Sounds very interesting. Well, why don't we jump into the first area, which is zero branch IT.
Yes, it is zero branch IT. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit of a story on what we're seeing in the market. Traditionally, we've had, if you look back 15 years ago and 10 years ago, people had a bunch of choices around their ICT in the branch and in the data centre. And Riverbed came from an era of helping people make their applications go faster. We've been known as doing one optimisation. But traditionally, customers have taken 3 different approaches to delivering applications or servers or data out into the branches to their users. And the first one is, they set up a network, set up a WAN, they connect to all the offices, and if they've got a performance problem, they throw bandwidth at it, right? And we know that that may or may not work.
Bandwidth doesn't always work.
No, it does not. Unfortunately, some of the applications are very chatty, and we solve a lot of those problems together for our customers. And the second thing is people sometimes use thin client. They use this thing called thin client, which is a way like projecting a screen and a keyboard, a screen and a mouse out from the data center out to the end user, and they do that to try and control costs, minimise the IT infrastructure in the branch, and
get the most out of that bandwidth at the branch.
That's exactly right. So, and they'll use certain technology to do that. The only problem with that is it's like a tunnel. It obfuscates the information. You're only pushing out a screen to a customer, a screen scrape or a screen refresh. What happens if things go bad? Well, users out there might experience this if they've got thin client where somebody's using Outlook or something like that on the end, and somebody presses a print job and it crushes the traffic going down to the branch. Suddenly Outlook and everything they're working on comes to a screening halt, and they're typing away, nothing happens, and then 20 seconds later the words appear on the screen. So it comes with its own set of problems, comes with some visibility issues. And then other people say, the other choice might be, okay, I'll put servers out and apps out in the branch, because end user performance is a very, very important thing. You don't want the phone ringing all the time. You don't want, your end users complaining and moaning about the performance of the way the application is delivered. So I put it locally, so I don't get impacted by latency or the distance, and or bandwidth, and I put the app locally. But that comes with its own set of problems, and that's really this whole problem around branch data management, as it were. So that's where it kind of begins and ends, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Going on to this graphic that we've got up there, we've done a bunch of studies. This was one we did with IDC, and we did one ourselves, that we found that what is happening is people are putting more and more services and data out in the branches, and there are various reasons for that we'll talk about later on. But what it means is that they're spending around 30 to 50% of the IT budget in the branch. That's a very large amount, and that is usually a variable cost, because when something goes wrong, I've got to go out and fix it. Okay. We also know that like 35% of organisations' servers are actually deployed in the branches. So despite the fact that people have gone on this journey to try and centralise as much data in the data centre as possible, people are still putting data out in the branches, which comes with this enormous problem. If you put data out in the middle of nowhere, there's a cost, and if that data is important, you've got to back it up. And so we'll be talking about some of those pain points too. But that's what we're seeing in the market, and so we went on an effort a couple of years ago to try and address this and make it a lot easier.
Daniel, what are you seeing as far as trends in your realm?
Look, as Brett said, it's all about improving that user experience. Applications are king. How do we help our customers to, get the best user experience? And, from a Telstra perspective, the solution we're going to talk about today is one of those, problem-solving technologies that may fix that. So
35% seems like a lot of data to still be out there, considering the trend to centralise. Why do you think that is?
Because, look, I'm going to steal some of Dan's thunder here, because he was going to talk about retail, because he's a bit of a retail guru, right, around the Wi-Fi and the analytics stuff, right? So I think in a recent report, and I always talk about this to a lot of customers, is in a recent report, there was a report that basically said that the Internet of Things, the amount of data being produced on the edge is going to become an avalanche. It's going to become 20 times larger than social media. The YouTubes, the Facebooks, all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you look at what's happening, people are producing more data on the edge because we're able to produce our own content. We're creating our own work. We've got sensor data that's being pulled out of manufacturing plants and fed back in. We've got smart manufacturing. We've got all these things. We've got retail that's pulling in sensor data and Wi-Fi information about people and shoppers and point-of-sale machines. So the data centre isn't, the HQ isn't the powerhouse it once was in terms of where the data is produced. It's being produced on the edge. We've seen that in the mobile network as well, right? It used to be we used to download stuff. Now it's all upload,
But just because it's being created at the edge doesn't mean it has to be stored at the edge.
That's right, because you got a problem with when you're creating important data at the edge, like on an app or files, that has to be backed up. That has to be brought back. It could be important data. All right, and if that is important data, or it's an app that's running something out there, like manufacturing CAD/CAM, you lose that, you lose the project, you lose the business.
Some of the customers that we talk to, have a very self-proclaimed poor backup process or even no backup process, let alone a disaster recovery methodology to bring sites back up. So, one of the real risks of storing that data at the branch is that risk around losing that data and what that means to your business. And it's not just losing the intellectual property of that data, it's also the resources and time to get that site up and running. So, not every customer has an IT person sitting at each remote branch site. Some of these sites
Can't afford it.
our customers, in the middle of nowhere. So how do you support a remote branch with a local server, in a consistent and realistic manner? It reduces business risk.
So I've had a polling question up for everybody whilst we were talking about that, and results say that almost everybody's either 44% are 1 to 25%, 44, and also 44%, 26 to 50% of their IT budget spent on branch IT. Is that expected or unexpected?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's too high or too low?
Look, it's usually we did 2 bits of research. IDC say 30 in their research. We actually researched ourselves to our own customer base, and it was as high as 50.
Yeah.
So it's falling in that bracket, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we jump into and look at the data centre and branch versus DC?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a funny slide because you've got the guy on the right who's obviously the data centre and the cost IT per unit, and the branch IT cost per unit is getting bigger and bigger. I guess this slide this graphic just puts it in perspective that what we've seen, like if we can step back 15 years ago and you look at the data centre, if somebody wanted to roll out a server or an application in the data centre, they physically had to rack and stack a server, physical device. I would take an image, I'd put it on an old, compact server, whatever it was, I'd put it on a server, I'd build it, I'd patch it, I'd bring the app up, I'd test it, and then even networking, cabling within the data centre was just reams of cables. It was old school, And this little company came along called VMware, right? And they changed everything. They created what was called virtualization. They changed the data center as we knew it forever. Everything changed. That impacted the hardware, the way people built hardware. Networks became no cables, everything got simplified. I could spin up a server. This virtualization technology allowed people to reduce the footprint in the data center, create efficiencies, scale in storage, scale in servers, scaling networking, better utilise resources. It was phenomenal, and that's what clouds are built on now, right? It's built on virtualisation technology and everything else that goes with it. So the bottom line is you've had this absolute revolution where in the data centre where amazing things have happened. We're even talking about hyperconvergence in the data centre at the moment. There's big data people are talking about, which is all about crunching all the data from all over the place. There's big data analytics. Analytics is being talked about. There's, software-defined networking in the data center where you abstract software from the network itself. And so there's some magic things going on. That's all happened in the data center. Has it happened in the branch? There's nothing happened in the branch in the last 15 years, right? Maybe a bit of Wi-Fi and the advent of the smartphone. That's just caused a headache for the IT manager because, everybody takes their smartphone, uses the corporate network and downloads the iOS update and clogs the network, which is a very common scenario that we see. But the bottom line is, if you look at the cost per unit in the data center, because of these magical technologies that have come along, it's reduced the cost massively. All right? The cost of compute, everything, storage, memory is dramatically reduced to serve a user or to serve an application out of the data center to the end users. So, the branch cost in IT. I was talking to a CIO not so long ago, and he says, we've done some magic things in the data center, magic things with the cloud. He says, but we just keep putting more stuff in the branches, and it keeps getting more and more and more expensive. Because you still got to have printers, you still got to have PCs, you've got to have truckloads of servers, you've got to have an Active Directory, you've got to have DNS, you've got to have all this stuff. And it's very difficult to support. You can't, if you want to make it look like a data center, then it's going to cost you what it is to, like it does to support a data center. data center has all the backup processes, has all the disaster
redundancy
recovery.
building.
That's it.
It's scalable. So the biggest thing that you're not going to get at the branch is the economics of that consumption type model that you have in the data center and the cloud model. So normally at the branch, when I've got to go put some more storage out there, I've got to go buy a new hard disk. That's fundamentally the issue. In the data center, it's a consumption model. It's a much cheaper proposition per gigabyte.
It is, and that's what the cloud's done as well. It's changed the way we consume services, right? The iPhones changed the way we consume services, and the Android phones, right? They changed the way it's humanisation of technology, right? So the cloud, primarily, if you look at something like 365, Office 365 by Microsoft, traditionally what I'd have to do is I'd have to build a data center to house all those apps, SharePoint, Outlook, you name it, and Exchange. I'd have to house that. If my business declined, I'd still have the same amount of licenses, same capacity, even though I haven't got as many users anymore. Whereas if I go to cloud and I go to 365, I get the latest software. I get the latest level of support. I don't need any infrastructure to house it. It all gets run. And I pay per head, per month. That's linear cost. And as my business ebbs and flows, if I'm the financial guy, the owner of the business, as my business ebbs and flows, I only consume what I need. This last year, we did a survey, our application performance survey last year, actually late 2015 that riverbed does. And we found out that 50% of all data center workloads are now in the cloud. So there's less data in the data center than there ever was. It's all moved out and into the cloud, right? So people are going holus bolus to that model. They're getting the economics of that model. But then the branch hasn't changed at all. So that's where this slide comes in. That's the dichotomy of what's happening and so, yeah.
So I'm going to jump into the next polling question,
Yep.
and we've got a couple of questions coming in from those on the line, and one in particular asking, are we going to answer it? Yeah, please send your questions now, and I'm looking at them as they come in, and I'm going to ask the good ones, the interesting ones, or as many as we can get to of our panelists. So please do send us lots of questions. So the next polling question's up, so tell us what you think about that one. And whilst we're doing that, I'm interested to know, so for someone and the organisations that do have lots of branches that haven't been updating the IT and the where the data is sitting, what's an easy first step for someone to say, because you walk into some organisations and the terminal looks like it's 20 years old. There's a lot of old tech out there, right? So what would your suggestion be for a first step?
Look, you've got to look at where you want your data to be, basically. Do you want it in the data center? Do you want it back at the branch? But the first step is looking at, we take the customers on a journey around basically looking at the cost structures and creating an ROI and running a workshop and gathering their requirements. That's generally a first step for us in terms of having a conversation about where you want your data to live. How important is that data? What data does need to be backed up? And, how do your apps perform if you put them back in the data center? But most of the time they want to keep that stuff on site. It's there for a reason. So how do we migrate that onto this new platform? And what are your requirements? It's as simple as that. So we generally take them through a process of a workshop and working out an ROI.
What do you see, Daniel, as maybe an example of someone that's been in that situation and taken that first step?
Exactly what Brett said. It's all about the application, so understanding what the requirements are at the branch site. The requirements from an application perspective and a user perspective will dictate naturally if you can virtualise servers on site or if servers are required to stay. There is some instances where servers may be required, but in most instances we see customers can look at really consolidating their data and storage and virtualising that onto a device. And then also, leveraging the technology that they're doing in the data center at the branch. So,
yep.
So results are in. 41% take less than 24 hours when there's a failure in the branch. However, 25% are less than a week, so up to a week.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were kind of chatting about this earlier. So talk us through the risks and what's going on with these branches and that kind of situation.
So, I mean, a lot of people, I would have liked to ask the audience a question around tape. Who still uses tape, to back up? I don't know why we're using tape still, because we don't even use it for our music anymore, pretty much. So, that's an interesting... tapes are prone. A lot of people use either tapes in the branches, and you've got to rotate tapes through, basically. So as data is created on site, people will punch a tape into a tape machine. They will take a backup, an incremental backup overnight, but then we'll take a full backup on the weekend of all the data. All right, and that's why you're probably seeing people say, we would lose, a lot of data. It would take us a week to recover because they've got to get all those tapes back, and generally you double the time it takes to actually back up, and that tells you how long you'll double or triple, and that tells you how long it's going to take to bring it back or to recover. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And a lot of people, when they do bring it back, find that it's corrupted, or it's, they've lost data.
Anything else to add to that, Daniel?
I'm just looking at the slide that we've currently got on the screen. I think we've covered a few of the pain points. One of the points we haven't covered is around overseas branch data. A lot of our customers are expanding, as Telstra is expanding globally. So as you expand globally, you've got to have staff overseas. How do you support those staff in those remote branches internationally? So once again, it becomes more important about securing that data. If you're in an international site and you've got a specific set of data, it's at risk of potentially being lost if there's an unreliable WAN link or something like that. So how do you have a regime of backup? How do you secure that data? We talk about data sovereignty. So a lot of our government customers and industry bodies have a mandate to perform to a set of standards. So the data sovereignty rules will dictate that the personable identifiable data would be kept on Australian shores. So this solution that we're talking about today, storage centralisation, actually enables you to keep the actual data in Australia, but the local copy on the international site is actually portrayed from the data centre itself.
Projected, yeah.
Projected, sorry.
So I look at branch IT points. We've gone through a number of surveys as well that says the top thing, the reason why people keep data in the branch is end user experience. Because if they keep it in the data centre and they're trying to access it, it's too slow, they're too far away, they're on long WAN links, and that's the reason why they do it. And then when you look at the branch data points that we're looking up here, backup is a pain. Like talking about tapes. Then if you go, okay, what's your disaster recovery plan? Most people don't have a disaster recovery plan for a site. They don't have a recovery point objective or a recovery time objective for that site. I haven't walked into a customer yet that I've talked to and says, we have a recovery time and a recovery point for our branch sites. I've never had that conversation. So, and recovery time is how long it takes you to recover, which we asked there, and then recovery point is how much data you're willing to lose. And then, we've also talked about the cost of supporting remote branches. If I've got servers out in the branch and, I'm an enterprise, I might have to send out a guy to rebuild a server, rebuild, the OS, rebuild the network, and it's usually one or two guys, or maybe three guys I've got to send out over a period of a number of days. And I've got to bring all my tapes back, all my data back, and I've got to restore from those points. Right? So, that's a high cost, a variable cost when things go bad. And then the other thing which is interesting is data growth. There's a lot, they say data growth is up towards 60% a year in some cases, right? Some of the storage vendors say that. And if you look at that, you go, well, if I put a disk in a server now, and I run out, and Dan alluded to this, talked about this earlier, and I need more space on that disk or on that file server in that branch, I've got to run out and put another disk in it. I've just got to put another disk. I've done customer forums with Telstra where customers have basically said, we cannot back up fast enough. We are losing data every day. So data growth is becoming a problem. It's a real pain point. And again, it's something we'll talk about later in terms of we can address it directly, and I'll give a use case around that. So yeah. The other thing is, the loss of business in the branches. If you have critical data in the branches, you're a law firm and you have matters in the branches, you lose that data or server failure, you could lose the case. You could lose, that legal matter. If you lose an app, lose, as I said earlier, around engineering and stuff like that, or a remote project. If you're in construction, if you lose that server that's running the project, and you haven't backed that up because you're on skinny links, you've lost the project. You're done and dusted, pretty much. So we see a lot of that. We see a lot of data hanging by a thread, and people saying, "Oh, I use a USB key to back up," and you take it home in your car.
Yeah.
So a lot of pain points around branch data, and a lot of cost, a lot of variable costs around the equipment.
So, I mean, there's a lot of points there, and clearly the growth of data has got to be one of the reasons. We had a really good question from the audience, so
Yep.
Thank you. Keep the questions coming in. And we talked about it earlier. Given it's been left for so long, why is it becoming such a big issue right now?
It's a very good question. I think it's complexity. All right, the market is getting so complex. If somebody can tell me where their data is going to be in 4 years, I'll pat them back and say you're an Oracle, you're a seer, because nobody can tell me where their data is going to be in 4 years' time. Is it going to be in the cloud? Is it going to be 365? Is it going to be Google? Is it going to be data center? Is it going to be mobile? Is it going to be a tablet? Is it going to be out in the branch? Where's it going to be? Where do you need your data to be? All right, and this complexity is people are trying everything to try and solve the end user performance issue and the complexity, but at the same time, they're putting infrastructure out there to solve the end user performance. So it's like this dichotomy, this situation where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So it's happening, right? And there's so much information being produced on the edge. I can't jam that down a WAN link every single step of the day, second of the day, pushing up the other way, because then I clog the day-to-day operations of my applications out of the data center. So, customers have got a real challenge on their hands at the moment. The amount of complexity is out of control. If you put something on your network that tells you, we do performance management as well. We go onto a lot of customers' network, and we find stuff they don't even know about running over the network, applications running over the network. BitTorrent consuming 10% of the customer network, or 50% of the network being consumed by antivirus updates. There's a lot of complexity out there, and customers having to deal with it, and they're dealing with it by, putting stuff out there. Or I have to capture data because it's too big. The data growth is too big. Pardon you.
Yeah, I've got something in my throat.
Have you?
There's also the cost of storage in the data center as well as a driver. That continues to decrease.
Yeah.
So that makes other solutions at the branch a viable option.
All right, excuse me, everyone. Got a bit of something in my throat, but we're going to battle through. All right. So we're going to go to a polling question.
Yep.
We'll ask another question as well from the audience. What are the 3 key risks companies face by not investing in branch management?
Oh, that's a good one. There's a great video on the internet that I showed a few people, and it's about Disney Pixar, and it's Oren Jacobs and I think it's Galen. It was when Steve Jobs was running Pixar at the time, but basically it really emphasises what happens when things go bad and you lose data. And the whole thing about it's written in like a cartoon. It's all about Toy Story 2, and basically it talks about how they were close to completing Toy Story 2. There was a deletion on the system, and they lost most of the data, like 90% of Toy Story 2. And it was only the fact, and then they went to their backups. And they went to the backups and pulled, tapes out, and they found that they hadn't been backing up the tapes for the last 3 months.
Which is a common occurrence.
Yeah. And then it talks about they were basically 20 seconds away from going out of business, and Pixar would not be a household name that we know it. There was another one.
But how did they solve their issue at the end?
Hey?
Where was the data stored?
It was stored on a computer at home. Galen had a kid, and she stored it. She could take copies of the data and put it so she could work from home. That was just blind luck, basically.
Put the computer in the car from home, brought it in the studio. and save the day.
It was funny. So, sorry, going back to that question, you know, what are the main risks? So that one is you know, complete business loss is your number one. You can take out an entire project. It's a lost cost to business. Yep. The second is, you know, compliance is a big issue as well. And I don't know. Those are the two biggies to me, really.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's all about, you know, business risk if you lose the data and compliance.
Yeah. So
the poll question results are back, and with 83% saying that they can recover data up to the point of failure outage at their branch.
That's pretty good. Not bad. Yeah.
So that's a good result.
Yeah, that's not bad. It's just, you know, then you measure that up with how long it takes.
Yeah. Two-sided graph.
Yeah. So you hope that you can bring it back, right? You know, but you don't try it all the time. Mm. You know, not a lot of people actually go and dig through tapes and trial restore every week. You know. Anyway, so I think there was a slide in front of this, wasn't there? It was the iPhone one.
That's coming next.
That's coming next.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, that's up next. So let's talk about the solution first.
So yeah, so Telstra being a big strategic partner of Riverbed, and they've taken a technology of ours called Steel Fusion and turned it into a managed service called storage centralisation. But what it does is it addresses all of these issues. So all these problems such as backing up and having backup processes, all these things such as running service in the branch where, you know, you've got to support them, we kind of eliminate that need, and we actually give customers the ability to even start to define things like RPOs and RTOs. And really what it does, if I put it in a nutshell, it's like extending the functionality of your data center, all the good things about the data center, all the amazing technologies about the data center, and extending that out to your branch. And so they really never have to step foot in a branch again, unless the branch completely blows up, the device blows up, and then a Telstra guy, what does the Telstra guy do?
Same Telstra guy that fixes your PSTN line or your carriage link will go out with a box, plug it in, no necessary education in IT necessarily required that a customer would normally have with a server, plugs it in, and Telstra bring that device back up and running.
Your data gets sucked back from the data center. So, and sometimes it's as quick as 30 minutes. So some pretty cool stuff. So we can do things like, you know, with the service, we can boot a server from the data center over the WAN in, you know, 30 seconds. So that's amazing. Never been able to be done before. And it also allows people to put data where they want to put it. You know, where do you want your data? You want it in the data center, you want to push an app out to the branch. If I push an app out to the branch, there's a file server, you know, there's a problem with the, you know, I've got to patch it, I've got to do all that stuff. It just completely eliminates that. And that's, we have a tagline at Riverbed called Zero Branch IT. We're literally getting rid of the issues. If you've got data sovereignty issues, you put a box out there, it's encrypted at rest, and basically, you know, you don't have to worry about data sovereignty anymore. So it's pretty cool.
So you've talked a little bit about, you know, provisioning a new server out there. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on that with that, Daniel, around, you know, how customers provision new servers and applications out in a branch?
So I guess what we're talking here about the solution today, you know, Telstra's already looking at, you know, the WAN services at the site, maybe a router at site. What Telstra's proposing here with a solution like this would be to extend, I guess, the Telstra value over the top and provide a storage centralisation service that's going to change the way that you would provision a site. So, you know, instead of the costly server hardware, server maintenance, you know, software applications, you know, provisioning it, supporting it, we're actually proposing here that we use a better way of doing it with zero IT, essentially, and a service called storage centralisation. So it is a bit of a game changer.
So Telstra provide the platform, right, and they put it out there in it. And if a customer wants to, you know, he's in his data centre, he wants to basically provision a new server out in that branch, he connects to the storage out there, he spins up a VM in 30 seconds or less, and he drops it on the storage array in the data centre, and it syncs with the stuff out in the branch, and minutes later they're up and running in the branch with that file server, right? It's just, if that file server gets corrupted, you know, you offline it in the data center, and basically you patch it, and you're up and running in minutes again. So it's a phenomenal technology from that perspective, and a phenomenal service, because you're doing something completely transformational. You're eliminating half the issues you ever had before. You don't run backups off from the branch. You don't have tapes. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So the next slide is a good one, because that really puts it in perspective, right? It's all about it's like a smartphone experience in the branch. I'm going to use Jeremy's phone here. He's got a cover on it.
Prop provided.
It was safe, man. Yeah, that's right, prop. It's like, the storage centralization service is like an iPhone. If you look at what these things do, if I lose my phone, and my colleague Con did the other day, he was out on a boat. He's a first-timer on a boat. He had his keys in his pocket, his wallet, and his phone, and he fell in the water between the boat and the jetty, as you do when you're a complete novice. And of course, he's lost everything. And basically...
Hi, Con, if you're watching.
He's actually on holiday, so he's probably not seeing this. Maybe he's watching live broadcast. He's actually in the US. Anyway, so he dropped the phone. So what do you do when you recover from losing your iPhone, right? You walk down the Telstra store, you get a new iPhone, you pop the SIM in it. Then what do you do next? Well, I put my iCloud credentials or my Google Play Store credentials in, whatever it is, type it in, and what happens next? All my data comes back, all my contacts, all my email, all the apps come back with all the data. Why? Because they're stored, back in iCloud or wherever Apple keep them or Google keep them. Now that's the same with this experience around storage centralization. So if you want a new app, you provision it, and the App Store is like the data center. And if I want a new app, I go to the App Store. If I want a new app in the branches, I provision it. It basically downloads to my branch, which is my smartphone. Any changes I make get synchronized up. And if I lose that data, it's still back in the data center or in the App Store, right? If I wipe my phone or lose my phone, whatever it is. So it really transforms the way people can view a branch and provision services at a branch, and gives them complete agility. People can pop up, if you're in construction, you can pop up a branch and just provision a service and create I want voice out there, I want a Wi-Fi hotspot, I want a server, I want an app server, I want a file server, I want, I can just push what I want out there. It's quite remarkable tech. So that's it, really. It's like having a branch like an iPhone.
And restores it identical.
It does, yeah.
With low risk, because the data is good. The data's actually in the data center, the copy.
Yep.
So I think that's the other thing, is it is a near perfect backup as opposed to, best effort.
Is it a complicated transfer from an old system, legacy system, onto a new system, or like how? So
it's very interesting. It's a good question, actually, Jeremy. So there is a level of what we call data migration. You've got to migrate from your old stuff to new stuff. So you've got to put the data on the device that you use. This, storage centralization Steel Fusion device, you put it on there. It's got the virtualization layer. It's got storage on there. It's got, but you do have to migrate that. And we actually, as part of the service, the storage centralization, we create advice to do that. We give them an advisory and say, what's the best way to migrate that data onto it? There's about 4 different options, and we give them those options for different sites and help them out. We also help them with the design and their workloads, and all that whole process is part of storage centralization. And there's also Telstra partners who do data migration day in, day out, because a lot of Telstra customers migrate into Telstra's clouds, and they do data migration day in, day out. So there's partners who can help out there as well.
And we didn't touch on this before, but it might be interesting to talk about the partnership between Telstra and Riverbed. So how does that work?
Works quite well, really.
Excellently is the answer.
So far, are we?
500 plus customers so far.
Yeah, 500 plus customers in about 4 or 5 years. So it's been a bit of a success story.
A few world firsts.
Yeah.
So what we've done is in Telstra is taking the riverbed technology and turned it into a Telstra product. So the value that the Telstra product provides is a consistent approach. Obviously, there's a lower cost to install, because it is a I guess, a product in itself, right? So there's a lot of value in having it a consistent, very low-cost provided service. So I think the productisation that we've done around virtualisation in our cloud, so like a steel head end device, WAN optimisation.
That's a different story.
Which is a different story we haven't got time for today, around Office 365 acceleration and SaaS. And also this technology we're talking about today, storage centralisation. They're all service provider world first with Riverbed, so we're a very, strategic partner with Riverbed.
And how's the adoption been? Like, obviously 500 customers is great. Are you finding it an easy switch for people?
When it comes to storage centralisation, it's transformational. So there's a complete switching of the way you think about the branch. So that is the biggest single hurdle. The rest of the tech is fairly, it is complex in the back end, but it's fairly easy once you get it right. It enables you to do amazing things. So, but 500 customers, we've got a lot of customers who use Telstra's managed Riverbed WAN optimisation service and Office 365 and in the cloud and all that kind of stuff, and also performance management as well. We do a lot around looking into what way apps perform. So a whole raft of customers.
And is there a key decision maker in the organisations that generally needs to be won over, or is it a group or team or multiple divisions?
It's generally, we look at it, it's the guy who runs the IT. If it's an enterprise, it's the CIO or the infrastructure director, right? Because they're the guys that are seeing this issue around branch costs and infrastructure. They're the ones that are seeing this problem, right? And are looking at, well, I've taken my data center, I've reduced costs there, I've got a low cost point, I'm going to cloud, that's going to give me a better cost point and a scale point. And now, CIOs deal with which is my biggest cost, and then the next one rises up and goes, oh, it's branch, now that one's a pain. I've got to deal with that. Deal with all the rest, now I've got to deal with that. So, definitely those guys. So,
okay. Well, why don't we jump into next section, which is around industry alignment?
Yes. So, one of the ones I like to talk about is engineering, CAD/CAM, because, we walked into a customer the other day and they've got 2 massive servers sitting on site running CAD/CAM projects in, 3 or 4 branches around the country, and they've got, obviously, local customers. And these are heavy-duty server systems, and they've literally got one, and then one's on standby, just sitting there. Hardware sitting there. And what happens if there's a failure? We lose quite a bit of the data, we've got to restore it all. Literally the branch is down. It's, the CAD/CAM fails. We've got, 10 guys who are working on those programs the whole time, on engineering or whatever it is, or construction, and the thing goes down. That branch is not operational for 5 days. You look at that and you go, well, what's the cost per day? How much business have we lost out of the year? If they're turning over $1 million out of that branch, and you've just, you've lost a very significant portion of your revenue. If that happens more often than once, it's starting to. That could be the difference between profitability and non-profitability for some people. Significant. Did you want to talk about retail, Dan, Mr. Wi-Fi?
Yeah. So you touched on it a bit earlier around retail, but it is definitely around Wi-Fi and big data for retailers. There's a lot of, and not just Wi-Fi, a lot of sensor devices that's capturing location-based information around devices. Point of sale integration with applications is a big thing with retailers today, and it's how to best use the data that we capture to obviously increase revenue and make more sales. So a lot of the time, the applications that process that data actually live in the cloud or the data center. But the data that's captured is at the site.
Yeah.
How do we make it quicker? So what you've got to do is take the data to the data center, and that will reduce the processing time and be able to make the retailers make better decisions quicker and faster turnaround.
And of course, in the solution, it's synchronising the whole time with the data center.
Correct.
So, the data can be back in the data center in 2 or 3 minutes 2 or 3 minutes tops. Sometimes it's 15 seconds behind. That's amazing. Because then you can make decisions immediately. I always use the one, I walked into a retailer the other day, let's say, for example, it's Myers. I went to look for a pair of jeans. The problem is I spent 30 minutes in that area looking for a pair of jeans. I walked out and tactically bought, impulse buy a T-shirt, $15, right? What's the problem with that for Myers? I walked in and I didn't buy what I went in there to get, a pair of jeans. Well, what if they were tracking me on Wi-Fi, locked onto their Wi-Fi network? They're pulling in all the data the whole time about who's coming in and out of the store. They see me come into the store. They've got all my past purchases. They can see what size I am. Hopefully I haven't put on too much weight. So, and they can see where I am, right? They see what floor, everything like that. All the sensors are picking up where I am. And as I, 5 minutes in, they go, he's in the store. Okay, what did he look at the last time? He looked at X, Y, Z. He spent 30 minutes looking in the jean sections, but only bought a T-shirt on the way out. They send me a text or whatever it is, or via social media. They say, welcome to Myers, Brett. Here's an offer for you. If you buy jeans, a pair of jeans today, we'll give you another one for free. So that's the way retailers are looking at it, right? It's this opportunity to create a personalised offer. If you're getting reams of this data coming in, right? Because you've got sensor data everywhere. You're using, flow data in terms of, social media. You might be logging on via that. You've got past history. You've got POS. You've got frequent flyer data. You've got to bring that all together and make decisions like that. I'm not supposed to click my fingers on it. We're told that.
That's all right. It's going to be a really impactful point now. I've had a little bit of experience in retail, so my mind went instantly to something as simple as inventory management, right? Yeah. Like if you've got all of that data centrally located and there's got the business case for someone in a franchise chain or a chain of stores, has got to be as simple as just getting your inventory right. But this, thinking into the future, which is for a lot of companies around, NF. The chip technology, RF chip technology, and all this kind of stuff. Like, are you seeing some of the Telstra customers start to implement this now?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of customers start to do smarter things with inventory management systems. So as you said, like RFID, definitely around pallets and using Wi-Fi as a sensor to see pallets moving in and out of the warehouses or where they are. Some of the large retailers looking at Wi-Fi as a way to understand, customer patterns and
hotspots
and charging appropriately for real estate, stuff like that. So, at the end of the day, that is all about capturing data, which is very, very valuable data.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump in and talk about Visy, shall we?
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
This is a Telstra Riverbed customer and long-term Telstra Riverbed customer, actually.
Absolutely.
Good guys. They actually looked at, they had, service and storage in the branch, and basically they looked at Steel Fusion. They said, this looks good. Microsoft, our friends at Microsoft, are also talking to them at the same time about Store Simple. So a lot of the problems that you have, again, around data exhaustion, data growth, people are starting to say, well, I want to take my data out of the data center. I want to, instead of putting it to tape, I want to put it into a cloud. And that's exactly what the Microsoft Store Simple device does. It takes data, it looks like a storage array, and it pushes it into the cloud. We connect to that. So we take all the branch data, and it's being backed up, goes back to, into the the Visy data center, and then it gets pushed out to Azure. So they're not only leveraging the capability of zero branch IT and the solution from Telstra and Riverbed, they're getting economics of storing that data. They're getting cloud economics, cost per gig, cents per gig of using Microsoft Azure and getting that cost right down for the branches in terms of storage costs. So it's a really elegant solution. It shows you how a customer has managed to tie this together with the cloud to get cloud economics, reduce cost and reduce the cost of the branches at the same time. So it's a really cool story, and that was one that was released, I think, about 3 or 4 weeks ago to the press.
Got anything to add to that, Daniel?
I think Brett pretty much said it all, but we've addressed all the pain points.
Yeah.
It's about the application experience, increasing that user experience.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about.
Very good. All right. So Telstra, so a customer example here, and then we can jump onto the final slide.
So this is another Telstra customer. These guys put it out there in terms of they were an existing Riverbed Telstra customer. Again, we talked to them about the solution, and it made a lot of sense. They were opening new sites, and they, for a small business customer, the issue is, is not necessarily about cost of data and RPO and RTO and all this kind of stuff. It's more about, I don't have enough hours in the day. There's only 2 of us supporting 10 sites, and doing everything in IT. They're the network guy, the voice guy, the cloud guy, the data center guy. They're everything. So, small IT team, expanding rapidly, what requires servers out in the branches, international and domestic, and this just made a lot of sense for them. It means they can put a new site up, turn a site up very, very quickly, and just push services out there, like servers and other bits and pieces. So, and reduce the cost of supporting it. Not have to get on a plane.
Daniel, anything else you want to run through on that one?
Better ROI, return on investment.
It's all about return on investment.
Better ROI. Okay, well, those that are watching are going to be able to come in and book a demo at the Customer Insight Centre in either Melbourne or Sydney. But why don't we talk about one final takeaway for your audience today? So is there one major thing that you'd like to leave them with, Brett, first?
Look, it really doesn't matter where your data is or where you want it to be. You need to have an architectural choice about where you want it to be. You don't know where it's going to be in the future, whether it's going to be in the branch, in the cloud, or the data centre. And I guess Telstra and Riverbed combined, we offer platforms to cater for all of that, right? And that's the bottom line. And so if you're interested, come by the CIC.
And Daniel, one big takeaway for everyone that's watching?
I guess for me, it's the proposition around customers looking after their data centre and focusing on the core business, and let Telstra worry about the branch storage solution. Telstra can get the site up and running very quickly if anything goes wrong. More than likely, Telstra is already looking after your carriage WAN services at site. Let Telstra also look at the branch storage and let us look after that if things go wrong.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've got one last question from the audience, and then we're going to finish up. So the last question we've got is, does this solution address the challenge of remote off-network access to data?
That's very interesting, and probably a point that we forgot. Wonder if it's one of the Riverbed guys. No, Telstra guys. That's a canned question. No, it does. So we have a lot of people use it for disconnected operations like mining sites and stuff like that, and remote project sites. Because if it's synchronising with the data centre, right, all the time, and the site goes down, can I still access my data? And the answer is yes. So usually we fully replicate, we create a complete working set out there of the application or the file server. And if the network goes down, you can still access that maybe still access that app that's local. And then when the network comes back up, it just resynchronises everything. So yes, it's known as disconnected operations, and yes, you can do that.
Fantastic. Well, we might wrap up.
Okay.
Brett,
thanks, Jeremy.
Daniel, thank you so much for coming in. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Jeremy.
And for everyone that was watching, thank you so much for joining us. You can get more information on telstra.com. As I mentioned, for a demonstration of the storage centralisation in either Melbourne or Sydney, you can come to the Customer Insight Centre. Just contact your account executive. If your question wasn't answered and you sent it through, the answers will be emailed to you. You'll also get an email within 48 hours with a link to watch the recording of today. And we'd love your feedback, so there'll be a screen that comes on at the conclusion of this event, so please give us your feedback there. On behalf of the Telstra Virtual Events team, I'd like to thank you for coming. It's been fantastic. My name is Jeremy Little, and I'll see you on the next live event. See you later.